A show of hands, who here feels busier than ever? Those who don't. Okay, so it will come as no surprise to hear that new research from Wild Nutrition reveals that 65% of women feel stressed daily and are craving time to find that balance. So we want to unpack more about that today with our panel, including Dr. Raj Arora, Nicole Vignola, did I say that right, Liz? Isabelle Nunn, and the lovely Sophia. So, right, we're going to talk more about finding that balance in 2026, tools and techniques to help us stay there, and what we do when we find ourselves becoming unbalanced. So I'm going to hand over to the panel now, and they're going to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves and what they do. Start with you, Dr. Raj.
Thank you, and hello everybody, and I'm really happy to be here today. It sounds like it's going to be a great event. I'm Dr. Raj Arora. I'm a GP, a health educator, a TV medic, a mummy of two, and I also run my own business, so a private GP clinic with wellness, skincare, aesthetics as well. So pretty busy. So this conversation, I think I can learn from too today. But I'm also somebody who spends a lot of time thinking about wellness in the sense of what's the organic way we can receive that wellness, and obviously in that there's diet, nutrition, and of course always a question of supplements. So it's very, very timely for today's discussion.
Brilliant.
Hello everyone, I'm Nicole Vignola. I'm a neuroscientist and author. I essentially have collaborated with Wild Nutrition to basically bring neuroscience to the masses and educate women and people on how the brain works, and essentially just give tools and understanding of the mechanisms of the brain. You like most people, they kind of like, okay, it's not me, it's my brain, and there's something we can do about this. So that's my mission. As I have an Instagram platform, and just really happy to be here. And I think they need this conversation too. Now that you told me all the things that you do out there, I'm actually busier than I thought in months. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Isabelle. I'm the head of nutrition at Wild Nutrition, and my background is in pharmacy and nutrition. I lead a team of 10 nutritional therapists who are busy providing consultations for free to a very wide audience. And I've got the privilege to work closely with our co-founder, who's in the room, Henrietta, on formulations with our head of product. And that's very, very exciting. It's a really exciting time in the wellness industry, I think, especially for the year ahead. And we'll learn so much more tonight.
I am Sophia. I'm a poet. How I found myself here is just felt really aligned with Wild Nutrition. I think once upon a time, poets tended to live in a mountain somewhere and only come down every now and then to speak the word to a king or a prince or the speaker's corner. So it's been really interesting being a poet. So the practice hasn't changed, but the environment you do it in has completely transformed. So it's been quite interesting figuring out how to do something that requires such stillness and such balance in London. And so yeah, that's how I'm here. I'm an author as well.
Okay, I feel really low around. All right, we're going to talk about the mental load and nervous system to start with. Okay, so the theme of tonight is rooted in wellness. And what does that mean to each of you? The research from Wild Nutrition revealed that the mental load was one of the top reasons for feeling unbalanced. That's 32%. With a lack of sleep, the biggest reason at 41%. So Nicole, the nervous system. Can we talk more about that? I mean, what role is it playing in our day-to-day, and what is happening to the brain when we're under stress? So when people talk about shutting down, when they feel stressed, what is happening and why?
I'm going to tie that in with the mental load because I think that's really important. So at the moment, I'm writing a book called Mental Currency, which is all about that cognitive load. And women predominantly tend to carry more open tabs. And so these kind of loops that don't get closed, and those kind of come up as the birthday cards that we have to send to the school and the laundry and all those little extra things that we have to carry that keep running in the back of the minds. They actually take up a lot of cognitive resources, and then you don't have any left for yourself. And we actually have a finite amount of cognitive resources on a daily basis. This is well grounded in the literature. We basically get a buildup of glutamate, which is an excitatory chain neurotransmitter. When that happens, the prefrontal cortex tends to shut down. And what we see in the research is that easier decisions start to come into play because impulse control basically breaks, if you will, for lack of a better term. And so that looks like you start forfeiting on your habits and decisions to take the easier route because it's less metabolically costly, if you will. So it's easier to take that route. And so if we are tired and we're stressed, we start shutting down, we've had lack of sleep, got all these stressful, things in our lives, then of course we're going to revert to the easier route. And sometimes that can be the detrimental thing for us. That can look like maybe ordering takeout instead of cooking. But obviously cooking is going to take a lot more cognitive energy, if you will. And so from that perspective, I just wanted to highlight that the mental load is a real thing. And so the central nervous system, we've got, two different systems, the parasympathetic nervous system and then the sympathetic nervous system. So one is your rest and digest and one is your go mode, if you will. And I think what happens is that throughout the day, we tend to get this other static load, this buildup of stressful events. You get a kind of trigger stacking. By the end of the day, your heron has 6 snaps and that's the thing that sends you over the edge. But that wasn't the thing. It was the accumulation of all of the cortisol that built up throughout the day. So you've got these 2 networks in the brain. One is your central executive network and one is your default mode network. So default mode network is your default mode type thinking. Those thoughts that are running in the background. They can become negative when we're stressed. Now, the problem is that when we're constantly thinking about all those open loops, all those tasks, all the chores, all of the mental loads, and then we're also scrolling social media, we don't allow the default mode network to activate because they can't work together at the same time. Asterisk to that statement. But for lack of time purposes, they basically, when one is on, the other one is off. Meaning that what happens is we get into bed at night and we can't distract ourselves. So then all of those thoughts that we haven't sifted throughout the day come into play. You add that allostatic load of stress, all of a sudden you've got negative referential type thinking where you're looping in on your own thoughts, ruminating. Can you guys resonate with that? Mm-hmm. And so making sure that you're implementing these kind of tools throughout the day, there could be 5-10 minutes space for yourself to allow yourself to just breathe. Like that meditation was amazing. I actually think I went somewhere else. I needed that. That in itself can be such a simple tool for us being able to basically walk through those thoughts so we don't then lie in bed at night thinking about it when we're supposed to be sleeping.
Okay, so what can women do when we leave the room today that's going to make a difference to the brain?
Well, so earlier on the physiological sigh. Has anyone ever heard of the physiological sigh? Yeah, so inhale through the nose, extra sit at the top, pause, and then a long exhale through the mouth. Have you ever been stressed and you start huffing and puffing around the house and then your partner's like, what's wrong with you? That's actually a good thing. Sorry. It's a good thing. It's basically your brain trying to regulate its breathing rate and dump carbon dioxide and get back to a state of parasympathetic stress. So we can fast forward that by actually forcing the sigh. So that's what I loved about the meditation, was in through the nose and then out through the mouth. So I'll do it once and then we can do 2 rounds together. So inhale once. Another one, pause, and a long exhale through the mouth. So let's do another one like that. You feel much calmer? Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's my trick. It's my party trick. So that you can do anywhere. And basically what you want to do is every time you feel something stressful, you then want to regulate from that. Because then what they're doing is you're teaching your brain and body that it's okay that you feel stressed because you have a way to regulate from that. And every time you do that, you start to create a malleable central nervous system that can shift between one state and the other effectively without lingering for too long.
Is that why, sorry, but is that why when you're feeling stressed, you naturally go,
Yeah, yes.
and then my husband says, why do you keep doing that? So annoying. It's how things sound.
Yeah. That's what I brought up about partners. So glad you came to me.
Sighing is good.
What take you off the team? To talk about, so in your world as a GP though, what are some of the most common pain points you're hearing from women when it comes to stress and mental health?
So I think the manifestation for women is that, you don't tend to go to a GP and say, oh, well, I'm really stressed because, my dog's unwell, you tend to go in and then you put a bit of a front on, then you basically describe the symptoms. You'll go in and say, well, I'm not sleeping very well, or, so stressed all the time. So we hear the physical or the emotional manifestations of whatever you're experiencing. So you might say, I'm not sleeping well, or my appetite's not good, I can't focus on one thing, or, brain fog, and that's the whole other topic. But you can get that when you're not, the nervous system is also on the whole time. And then physical manifestations, aches and pains, so lots of neck stress, for example, lower back pains. You might come in saying, you've got the joint aches are flaring up, you've got digestive or gut issues are flaring up, skin might flare up. So there's lots of physical manifestations you might see as well. So those are the pain points people coming in. And what I tend to do is break it back down to basics. So I'll just go into what's going on with their life. And I love being a GP because you just get to know all about your patients. And that's what I'm there for. So I'll ignore everything they've told me for a second. I put it all down, write it all down. And I go, right, okay, so tell me what's happening in life. I find out about their children, their life, their job. And once they understand what's happening in their lives, that gives you a picture of a 360 of why they might be feeling a certain way. And it's quite a tough job because you also have to keep things, well, there could be something acute going on. So don't just put it all down to stress. It could be something else. But for stress, those are the pain points that we see clinically. And I guess the job of being a GP and not being a specialist, I guess, is that you are able to then take those symptoms and understand what's happening in that specific person's life. Now, like we mentioned, everyone's different. Yeah. So you almost got to go into that person's life, delve into their issues, delve into, is it grief? Is it, children pissing them off, sorry, my French, is something else. Whatever's happening, is it hormones? Whatever it is that's happening, we need to address that. And sometimes it is something more physical that's happening. So they might actually have a chronic medical condition, which is now flared up. And so they won't come in and tell us that that's what's stressing them. But it might have then, they have financial issues from the back of it, or they, no longer can see their mum who's, living up north and they can't visit them. There's lots of different things that could be happening in a scenario. And I think for us, it's unpacking that and understanding that actually the pain points that we see are never, it's always a symptom normally that comes to us, and they're all related to other things that are happening.
Can you be my GP, please?
Oh,
I was saying,
Yes, please. Okay, Sophia. Now we're on to research that said Gen Z, you are feeling it the most. 27% of 18 to 34-year-olds are most likely to say they have high levels of stress. So in your experience, how is modern life impacting stress levels?
I can literally hear my dad being like, what have you guys got to worry over?
Every parent of Gen Z in this room go, yeah, come here.
Yeah, sure they do. And I think stress is relative as well. I think what fills up 100% of my stress cup and fills up someone else's is going to be different, right? When I was 16, what stressed me out so much, I probably wouldn't care about now. I might still care about it so much, but chances are I wouldn't care about it as much. But I think one, we have a heightened awareness to how we feel, more so than I would say many generations before us, purely because we have names for everything, we have labels for everything. We have so much information on just about everything. We're constantly looking at ourselves and analysing ourselves and asking ourselves these, we call them philosophical questions, but it will be things like, am I a clean girl aesthetic, or am I? Yes, you already said, get out of butt.
Wow. Okay.
You would a bit of a top up, like how top up. Like I say that to say, I think we're so in the face of so many different things telling us who to be, how to be. We've grown up watching so many different lifestyles presented to us as the right way to live. You should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. At your age, you should be doing this. Your relationship should look like this. Your partner should be doing this for you. Your job should be doing this for you. If your boss isn't doing that, close the laptop and move on. And something's good, something's bad, something's really ugly. But I think just having all of this information telling us how to be and who to be, we've become so separate from, I would say, our source and our spirit. And I don't say spirit in a whimsical sense. I mean it in the sense that every single person is built for something very specific. And the way you laugh, the way you walk, the things you gravitate towards, your preferences, they're all aligned to the path that you're meant to be taking. And let's say you're a bird of flight, but you've got all of these things around you saying what you should be doing is learning how to swim. What you should be doing is learning how to hunt. But actually what you're meant to be doing is flying around somewhere. You're going to feel so much stress because you're going to feel like you're under-delivering. Why can't I swim? Why can't I breathe underwater? I'm not going far enough. I'm not going as fast as my friends. I'm not going as hard as my friends. I'm not clean girl enough. I'm not gothic girl enough. I'm not... And it's a lot of I'm not enough, but actually you're competing in someone else's lane a lot of the time. And I think that's why people are... I think that's why so many of my friends, even myself sometimes, are stressed, because we're just constantly comparing ourselves. I can't remember who the actor was, but she kind of said, I think the problem with Gen Z is that you're all just looking at yourselves too much.
You judge. I think you judge each other constantly, which we never really did. And also, I think, having a daughter who's 21, it's everything you feel. If you look for it, it can be validated. Yeah. There's no check. There's no checking, you know. And I mean, we would say, you know, I mean, as an Irish, you know, I have an Irish mother. I was an Irish mother. You know, my daughter, I've got anxiety, but you're just nervous. Yeah. No, mum, it's anxiety. And I just think, you know, then you have that validation. It's all set out for you, so they can come to you with their stick and say, "This is what I've got." Yeah. So it's hard for you though because it is relative.
It feels so true as well. It's what you've grown up. Yeah, and it seems so impossible to almost separate from it because it's the world you've grown up in. It's everything you see and it's everyone around you. But it's changing because I think people are enough in deciding to go analog again and just switch on together.
Good. Right, Isabelle, there has been a lot of excitement about functional mushrooms recently. Functional. What impact do they have on our nervous system? I cannot wait to try these.
Okay, so mushrooms have been around for over 800 billion years, and in the East, we've used it for millennia for their nutritional properties. So they're packed with fiber, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory compounds. But now in the West, we started studying the mushrooms more in depth. So all the active compounds that you'll find in the different mushrooms that you consume, but also what you'll see on shelves or now actually in sparkling drinks as well. They are all being studied for their own properties. So some people have been using them for a state of overwhelm, for the immune function, stress, sleep. But if we were to look a little bit more into lion's mane, for example, which is one of the most heavily studied mushrooms, it's packed with beta-glucans, which is a type of polysaccharide. So you'll find it also in oats, for instance. So it's incredibly good for your immune system. It's also got prebiotic fibers, so really, really good for your gut. And we know that the gut and the brain communicate with each other all the time. So they impact on your neurotransmitters, so your feel-good hormones, and they support sleep. Every part of the body really is supported by the gut. But we also have those compounds called the hericenones, and they act on the brain. So the research has found that they not only help protect, repair neurons, but they also help build connections in the brain. So it supports memory. They also have a huge amount of antioxidants, so it has that protective factor on the brain cells. And we know that we're daily affected by what we call oxidative stress. So that could be stress in your daily life, it could be medication, it could be pollution. There's such a wide array of factors that could contribute to stress. And we know that stress leads to what we call chronic inflammation and leads to medical conditions in the long run. So going back to lion's mane, it's a fantastic mushroom, heavily studied. We also have seen its research in possibly preventing the growth of what we call amyloid plaques, so slowing down that development of dementia, that memory decline. And when we speak to thousands of women, especially women, but men too, every month, that worry about how well I can stay focused, how I'm experiencing brain fog. We mentioned brain fog earlier, and we know that at different life stages, you could be experiencing brain fog. It's not just during your perimenopause, but it could also be when you're feeling really overwhelmed, when you're dehydrated. So yeah, we're really excited about mushrooms. Yeah.
So speaking of that, obviously there is a lot out there. There is a lot of everything out there. There's so much noise in this space. So just as a consumer, I get this asked so much, and it's my personal thing. Why should we use what? What differentiates One Nutrition from all the other brands that we could be using? How long have I got? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with maybe
the main USPs.
Okay, so we are obviously a brand producing a range of supplements based on a full-grown technology, which means that we grow our nutrients in a base with all the cofactors that you would find, such as in an orange, for instance. And by providing this to the consumer in a multivitamin, for instance, you are able to have a form that is as close to nature. So it's easily absorbed, easily retained, and we know the efficacy is better. We go to great lengths with the research into our ingredients. So saffron, for example, is in our line stream that's coming out soon, and the research around that is unbelievable. But we also specialize in women's health. So when we look at the studies, we look at whether the dose has been used on women, has it had an effect, how long for, how robust is the study. Otherwise, there is no point putting it into a comprehensive, holistic blend. But another unique point that we offer as a brand is that it's the consultations we provide. So it's that community we're building, the conversations we have, and actually, to your point, Sophia, I think your generation is a lot more open to expressing their feelings. And what we find in consults is that we have a very wide base of consumers, from the mother calling for her teenager to the one who's preparing her body to conceive, maybe, and the busy mom as well, and beyond. And they all find that moment to just start delving into all their worries, and then their long list of supplements, or also their lifestyle. And initially we have 15 minutes, but we provide that continuity of care. So we're there to speak to them for half an hour later on. And we basically are on that journey with them throughout their different life stages. And that's really key.
I think that's invaluable. It is that connection and that ability to go somewhere where you know you're going to get the help and the answers you need.
Yeah, and someone that will do it, the 360. Yeah. It's not just in the collagen. It's actually all of it, all the well-being. Speaking of which, longevity. Right, longevity is something getting a lot of attention at the minute. This idea that it isn't just about living longer, but about feeling well for longer and aging well. So, Dr. Raj, what kind of conversations are you having with your community about longevity?
Well, I think at Sophia's point, there's so much information out there. So now, when you're talking to a community, or my patient community, they're very, very switched on. They're very, very, they come with information. They know, they've looked at the research. They know the papers. Of course, there's when we talk about research and papers, you'll find something for something. That's correct. For most people, look, they know where to go, and they research something and they've come in. So very well informed, I'd say, first of all. So when it comes to longevity, they're coming in with all the information, all the questions, which I love, because I feel that allows you to start at a point where you're like, okay, this is all really cool stuff you're asking, but let's just bring it down to basics. And sometimes they've forgotten to think about those things. So, they're asking about their whoops or their, tech devices, but, well, that's, wearables, so tech wearables, or they're talking about, supplements, for example, but they're just not even going down to fact they might be stressed about something else, or they're not sleeping well. So I always say longevity and living well is about, first of all, doing the proactive and the prevention. That's the first thing. So not just reacting to health issues, but being proactive in the first days. And then prevention. So make sure you're doing the normal boring, well, we call it boring, but it's lifesaver. You're screening, showing preventative bloods if you need them, making sure that you're eating well, you're doing all the lifestyle measures, you're exercising, you're moving, you're moving your mind, so cognition. So, you're making sure you're doing things that keep your mind going. So if you're going into post menopause, or you're now going into you're getting older, and you're actually somebody who, for example, now has empty nest, or you're now a grandparent who doesn't live with family, for example, really important to talk about an amyloid plaques and talking about memory recall. They're doing something to keep those lights switched on, keep your cognition going. They're talking a lot about those things.
Does word will count?
That's it. Yes, it does. So that is it. So you do all those things that are going to keep the basics going first, for your nutrition, your diet, your movement, and then you're going into layer 2, and that's where it gets interesting, because there's so much out there, and that's where you're talking about things like your supplements, your wearable tech, your health monitoring, your biohacking. Can I put my head into cold water? Can I do this? Is it going to save you from this? And it's really interesting, because as clinicians, as somebody who's in the private space as well, I feel like I have to keep up with it all. So I'm always my social media allows me to do that, because I find things that go viral. So, monthly I'll go through all the virals that happened that month to do with health. And I will sit down and I will learn, I will literally study them. and I will go and find all the research. This is my bedtime reading. Yeah, this is me. I am that person. And then I basically look at what actually is out there, and then I create content to break it down. So then I, I've just put one up today, which is about using menstrual blood as a face mask. Oh, yeah. And sure, don't do it. But people are doing this because they feel like it's a biohacking way of supporting their hormones. No, it's not. It's rubbish. It's not going to do anything for you. Probably do a skin infection at best. And so what I'm saying is that these fancy words that we see are all the conversation we're having around longevity at the moment. But we need to strip it down to basics and think about longevity is not a new concept, guys. It's always been that we're all trying to live. It's just that through our changes and generations and decades of life, things have changed. We now live longer because we've got smarter, haven't we? We've got more research, we've got more tools, we've got more education. So we're going to live longer. Well, not everybody, but people who are trying to. And I think you have to think about how you're going to biohack in the sense that you're making it bespoke to you. Remember, we all have different backgrounds, we all have different genes. We talk a lot about, this is really boring, but about cholesterol. I always say to my patients who are South Asian, for example, or not, they'll say, but I do everything and my cholesterol's so high. I'm like, it's your genes. You can eat the best diet, you can exercise all day long, cut all your fats out. You'll be seriously miserable, by the way. So you're going to live a really crap quality life because you just won't even eat a cake once in a while. But you're still going to have a high cholesterol on your tablet. So just think about yourself and your biohacking. Don't follow trends you're seeing on This Morning or whatever. Well, I do love This Morning, but morning program. I just don't follow the trends. Look at what's important for you. And that's why I love Wild Nutrition, because they go into you. Why is it? Because patients will come to clinic with, I kid you not, 30 supplements they're taking. They empty them out, and I'm sitting there like in the appointment, like, wow, okay, you take some stuff I haven't even heard of. I'm like, that's really interesting. So what's that for then? And then at the end, I'm like, you're weeing out most of the stuff, by the way. So how much you're spending on supplements, you're weeing half of this out. What you need is probably your vitamin D because you're tired. So we'll go through their health history, their symptoms, and then we'll bring them the supplements they need for that, because supplements do have a role, especially now where people are vegan or they're cutting out food groups or they're following certain diets or, they have certain conditions or illnesses, or they're just lacking in something like gut issues. Sometimes you can't absorb things from your diet. So it's important to not completely rule out supplements. They can be helpful.
So is it sometimes like chicken and egg? So, for example, 42% of women said they had shut down or had no energy when they felt stressed and unbalanced. But I can imagine that if you have no energy, then you feel stressed and unbalanced, and vice versa. So can we talk a little bit about cellular health in relation to energy, and why is it important?
Well, cells are important because they create, you need them to produce energy. So if you didn't have cells, you'd be able to function, basically. But your cellular, and this is where I think people get very technical about cellular health, but it is just the very basic of giving you energy. So it helps with all your energy production. So you need to make sure your cells are in good shape and good health. Then you need to make sure that then with good cellular health, you have metabolism regulations. So, there's always conversation around, I've got a high metabolism, I've got a low metabolism, but it's not as easy as that. It's to do with your cellular health, but to do with also the influences you're having on that cellular health. For example, hormones can impact that. And your cellular health would also not just produce hormone, but also regulate hormones as well. So we're talking about not just female hormones, now any hormone, or like thyroid, which both men and women have, or androgens, which both men and women have. And so different hormones, all hormones, and also oxidative stress. So obviously cellular energy will help to bring down the levels of how much oxidative stress you have. And that's not kind of stress you've been emotionally, that's the actual physical stress of the cells. So, if you're in areas of pollution or free radicals, the cells will react to that, and it will destroy cells, or impact those cells. So all the health of those cells. So if we're looking at skin health, for example, and the sun hits your skin cells, and you're in an area of lots of free radicals, you're not protecting your skin, that's going to break down that cell, in a sense that you'll then have accelerated aging. So it's all relative to what you're trying to achieve when it comes to your cells, and all these things about, you can biohack yourself and boost your cells. No, you can support cellular health, good cellular health. And that happens through the right diet, the right nutrition, and the right supplements if needed.
What nutrition, how can it help us when it comes to energy and turning into our body, tuning into our own bodies?
Okay, so obviously during the different life stages, our energy levels will vary. We also need to change the type of nutrition we provide our bodies with, depending again on if we are in the pregnancy stage or perhaps elderly. The protein requirements will change, your omega-3 requirements will change. In terms of trying to keep stable energy levels from a nutrition point of view, I mean, you've got your B vitamins, which are incredibly useful. I mean, first of all, we always look at diet, lifestyle, sleep, but that's when you need to top up. Iron also can play a huge role. The amount of women who come to us and tell us about how fatigued they feel, hair loss, and the first point of call is, have you had your iron levels checked?
I said that's my GP this week, and he let it, but anyway, fine, yes.
But, you know, it could also be an autoimmune issue. It could be a thyroid problem. So there's lots of different bases we have to cover ourselves with before starting to supplement. Vitamin D also can really impact. So if you are deficient in vitamin D, you can really feel lethargic and tired. And then you've got other things like making sure that your diet is packed with protein and fiber as well, because we know that fiber feeds into the gut, and that also supports protein and fiber combined will provide you with steadier energy levels, managing your blood sugar levels. But that can be done obviously for a dietary point of view, food combination, making sure you've got your essential fatty acids, so your nuts, your seeds, your oily fish at every meal as well, instead of thinking just 1 to 2 portions of fish a week. So there's lots of different things we can do to support our energy levels, but it will vary depending on your life stage and your needs, how much you put in versus how much perhaps you're training or exercising for. Are you nourishing yourself properly? And then we can look at the macronutrients and the micronutrients to support your body.
So we're now to talk about finding balance and energy in your daily life. Balance. Oh gosh, balance. Is that such a thing? There is a growing awareness about the importance of balance. So the winner in our research said reducing the stress levels is an important goal for them in 2026. The top intention, and I love this, the top intentions for this year were, okay, not what you think maybe, to eat better, 35%, to get more sleep, 29%, to drink more water, these are my people, 27%, and to spend more time outdoors, 26%. I love that because they're so achievable. I love the fact that these people are just, you know what, small, tiny baby step to feeling better, not, running about, just spend more time at home. So we heard earlier that womanhood is never one story, and you're all here with your own stories and your journey. So, Sophia, we're going to hear a poem from you after this discussion. Does creativity play a part in helping you process more stressful moments? And where do you go to find that energy you need in harder moments?
Yeah. Not to say that it's always like whimsical. I'm feeling really stressed out and I just go, and I feel so angry today. Sometimes it's like, but definitely, I think there's a type of meditation and there's a type of self-therapy that can only be done through writing. I think there's a slowing down, and I don't even mean typing, I mean physically writing and slowing down your brain and slowing down your emotions. I think you can get to the end of a journal and think, oh, actually, I kind of understood at least why I did that. And I can kind of, now I know the why, I can kind of potentially not do that again. So I do definitely think there's a meditation towards stress that happens in writing. So definitely, I think, luckily, my practice does slow me down. But I think also it forces stillness. I think there's sub-art forms. So, for example, if you're an opera singer, I reckon that really thrives on rage. You know, I reckon if you're really angry, at least you have something to really use all of your body strength to put into. Dance, the same thing. I think poetry is it relies on a quiet mind. I think it relies on stillness. I think it is chicken and egg. It forces me to do that and it forces me to do that. So, and I recommend it to people all the time. I think even when my parents are stressed about things or people in my life are stressed, I always just say, write something. Like, just start writing, write how you feel. What made you feel that way? Make that a thing, a house. Who was in the house when you were angry? What's on the walls of your anger? Who walks in all the time? And that kind of makes you irate. And it gives you it paints a picture of the feeling, I think. And I think that's all poetry is, really. It's painting a picture of the feeling. So it definitely brings understanding at the very minimum to why you're feeling that way.
What is the process that you go through if you feel that shift in balance? You begin to feel that shift in balance. And do you have any tips that could help us recognize those times when it's okay to self-support and when it's time to ask for more help?
I do. I've actually experienced physical and mental burnout myself. I was really ill with it back in 2017. after working non-stop in the NHS. I still work in the NHS, by the way. I love the NHS, but for me, I didn't listen to the science. It's actually my fault. So yes, I have lots of tips for this. First of all, I think self-compassion is one of the biggest things you have to have. And this is a thing that nobody has. None of us really. How often do we sit down and actually look at ourselves and go, it's okay, I'm actually doing quite a good job. Let's just, rein in a bit. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is knowing, because you have physical manifestations. So you might have poor sleep, it's got worse. You might either stop having an appetite or you're now eating a lot more. You might find that you stop seeing friends, you stop having social connections or wanting to go out. You might find that you are physically having palpitations, or you're feeling like you're short of breath or something's catching, or your mind can't focus on one thing, and you wanted to read a book. Now you can't do that. You're restless, you're irritable, you're getting angry, you're getting short with family members. What you said there, Nicola, about when you've already done that everything, and then the one thing snaps. You're thinking that's happening more often, maybe. So these are all signs you're not enjoying the things you like to do. You find the pleasure in this and the same things. And you're feeling it a lot of the time. So it's not just something you felt because you had a busy weekend and now you're feeling it on a Monday or whatever. It's like constantly happening through your life, and you're noticing it. The internal voices there saying something's not right. Listen to the voice. So just listen to it, because actually, if you don't, it will just get worse. And you might have physical burnout first, and then it'll become mental, or you might have mental and it'll become physical. So they both connect to each other. And then you're stopping altogether. So once ridden the camel's back, you're not able to do anything. So what use is that? So really, you want to stop and realize that much earlier on. And the kind of things you can do is to firstly have a conversation with yourself, which is that I am, I'm going to be compassionate to myself. I'm going to understand what are my to-do list that I need to do and what can wait. And that's really helpful, because actually everything at the moment is important, and everything in our minds, we have to pack lunches and we have to do birthday cards and we have to do this and everything's I have to. If we really sat down and listed what do we have to do, and I've done this a lot more the last year. So I'll have a really busy day, and then my husband might say, oh, Raj, you forgot to do that. And I probably noticed that I do this a lot more now, and I'll say to him, I can't do that right now. Whereas a year ago, I'd been like, yeah, I need that right now. At midnight in bed, I better do it. And I'll be like, I can't do that right now. I haven't got capacity for that. I'll do that tomorrow. I actually say that out loud, because otherwise you just feel, okay, I'll do it. I might just do it. It's 2 minutes. I'll just do it. But that extra thing that's 2 minutes is the thing you don't need, So I think knowing what's important now and what can wait for later in the week, for later in the month, and making a list. Saying no, it's the biggest learning I've had.
Delegating.
And delegate. Say no. And if an opportunity comes up, can't do everything. And this came quite difficult to me, because I think when you're a go-getter and you're somebody who wants to, you're succeeding in life, and in your view, you're doing really well, and all these great opportunities are coming. And then sometimes you've got to say, actually, I can't do that. And that's really hard when you've worked your whole life for something and think, oh, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. I've got FOMO here. But actually, you can't do everything, and things will come. And if they're for you, they won't pass you. And if they're not for you, they're not going to come to you. And that's how I see life. So saying no and then delegating is really important. So actually saying, okay, this I can give somebody else, and this I'm going to do. Really important. And the final thing, which is also most important, is taking time for yourself. So self-care. For me, self-care is skincare. I could have norovirus. I could understand you'll back me up on this. I could be ill. I'm going into that mirror when everyone's gone to bed, left me alone for 10 minutes. And I'm doing my skincare routine, because forget about the skin. Actually, it grounds me. It calms me down. I get my time for myself. I get time to actually think with clarity, and it really calms me down. Now, self-care can be different for different people. It could be journaling. It could be reading a book. It could be listening to music. It could be having a dance. I don't know, whatever it is. But find your self-care and make sure you're doing it regularly. Put it as a priority, not as if I get a minute, I'll do that. And you'll see a massive shift. And when you're feeling that balance is tipping, go back to that. And that's from my experience as a GP, but also as a patient who sat on the other side, in a hospital bed for 6 weeks, by the way, with really ill. I had lots of time to think. And think, what have I done wrong here? Oh, what's happened? So yeah, I think that's what I would recommend.
I think it's hard, because certainly other women of my generation, they very much associate self-care with being selfish.
Yes.
And Anna, yeah, do you know what? It's you're being selfish because you're doing what you want. Okay, but I'm supposed to do what everybody else wants, and not me. I'm always last. What's wrong with the latter?
I feel terrible for apologizing.
Just like, yes. Well, you also can't fuck from the empty cup. It sounds like big shit, but it's so true.
Yes.
Yeah. So in your day-to-day, you're listening and supporting others. How do you stay grounded and maintain the energy you need for your own health and well-being?
I have a few things, but I know you wouldn't think that as a scientist I would be creative, but it's creativity as well. And I actually am encouraging people to move towards creativity more. And that could be even something like skincare or creating your food in the morning. Because I think as humans, we're not really using our hands so much anymore. That's what I loved about you saying you were actually physically writing, because we see the hand connection with the somatosensory cortex and the motor cortex, which actually slows everything down, because you're not all of a sudden doing this in the target. And creativity for me, and just to add to what you were saying, when we have these kind of ruminative thoughts, when we look at the research, we actually studied thought worms. So what that is we track spontaneous thoughts. So when we're in default mode type thinking, our thoughts are spontaneous, meaning that they just kind of pop up and then they disappear. They don't have a beginning and an end. And we actually see them, we've called them thought worms. And basically what that means is, and you'll resonate with that feeling when you're in that ruminative state, there's no real beginning and end to how you feel. You struggle to explain how you feel. You struggle to put into words. The minute we have to generate words, we're actually activating the temporal lobe, which is a much smaller part of the brain, which forces us to have to think about how we're actually feeling and then generate the words to put a narrative to that story. So all of a sudden you're bookmarking from beginning to end, this is how I feel. And this is why music is so helpful as well, because you start attaching yourself to the lyrics, which give you a story to tell you how you're feeling right now. And you go, oh, that's what I'm feeling. Like I've got a way to express it now. And so I actually started learning guitar a couple of years ago. My boyfriend's a musician, and that's been an absolute life-saving grace for me. But you guys are going to hate me. I actually live by myself, and that's so good. My boyfriend's long distance, he doesn't feel. I wake up alone, I go to bed alone. I have 2 goats, 4 chickens, and 2 dogs. So I'm surrounded by nature all the time. But yeah, that's me. And just my life is slow. My life is slow, and I intentionally made it slow. I've gone analog. I've driven this like 26-year-old Toyota that's like ancient. I can't do any work in it, because my old car was like this, had this interface where I could send texts and do emails and take calls, and now I'm driving. You're gonna leave me alone, so I'm going analog.
Like Bernie, yes. So Isabelle, what does finding inner balance for you look like?
I really am trying to spend more time with the people I share more connections with. I'm trying to nurture them more, and I find that actually that's a way to express myself, because I just said we have to be a bit more compassionate with ourselves, but it's but hard to do that if you're not pausing. And spending those really special moments and actually building connections and maintaining your connections is a key point in the research to do with longevity. Sharing a meal with others rather than being on your phone, taking the time to create something that is, I love cooking, but I don't find the time during the week, so I would do so far more during the weekend. And allowing your friendships, your children, to just try new flavors, be bold with what you're offering, and actually they just forget about texture or, something really different. So doing that and spending far more time in nature, and that's my time for me, when I just need to be on my own. I can think clearly, even if I've got great music on, and I'm going, on a hill, and I'm completely out of breath at the top, but that's fine.
Were you walking? You're at the car. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And I just add to that real quick, because we've been talking about longevity and you've been talking about social connection, and the longest standing study on longevity conducted at Harvard, 85 years, they've been tracking people. The number one longevity tool or underlying is social connection. The quality of the connections of the people around you. And so it's interesting, because we're talking about all these longevity hacks. It's like, and it's human, it's actually physical connection that's important. So it's not just on the phone, it's actually seeing somebody in person.
Because actually you leave that digital space aside and you're more in the moment.
Yes.
Which I find helps me as a parent, as a mother, but also with friendships.
Yeah. And that's what I'm here about, going analog. My boyfriend's so good with his phone. He's which to his own detriment, because we're on a long distance relationship. But it means that I am now, my habits have always been good, but now even better. I mean, he only turns his phone on airplane mode at like 2:00 in the afternoon sometimes. Just crazy. So I'm adopting that, and I've realized that I'm spending a lot less time on social media. I'm obviously using it for work and then coming off it, and I've been able to implement really healthy boundaries where I get to still enjoy it for what it is. Because I don't want to preach that social media is bad, because I, built my entire career with it and I got to meet you guys with it. But it's being mindful of how much we're using it. And so when we can have a healthy relationship with it, we can enjoy it for what it is and then put it away and say, actually, I don't need this. So from 7 o'clock onwards, my phone goes off. Yeah. And it's just like, it's just me and, creativity and
So a question for you all, what does balance look like for women in 2026? Sophia, what would you like it to look like?
I would like balance to look like remembering. I think remembering the things that specifically make you feel grounded. Like you said, you can't prescribe one thing to every person. I'm half Asian and half African. We've got our own very personal set of illnesses that are going to be different to someone else. And I think remembering the things that make you personally feel confident, feel grounded. So, for example, I was in New York recently and I spent a lot of time with other poets, and it was the first time watching so many of my personality traits exist in other people. And that gave me a sense of confidence. And I forgot how much confidence played into me feeling mentally balanced in my head. I realized that in the moments of my life where I do feel a bit on shaky ground, I don't really know if I'm coming or going, the first thing that kind of slips is my self-esteem. So that's usually quite a clear indicator of if I'm feeling balanced or not. So I think figuring out what actually shakes your balance personally, what shakes it, because I could say everyone go and write a poem, that's not going to help everyone. It might just annoy someone, and that's what it's going to annoy me thoroughly. People 100%. But I think finding something that makes you remember your truth, what really helps you, what doesn't help you. And I think a lot of the time as well, and I know it sounds a bit whimsical, but I'm a poet. I think when people say do what feeds your inner child, I take that really seriously, because I think a lot of the time the things that you needed when you were 15, 14, 13, even younger, to feel most like yourself, to feel even just a level of joy that lasts, I was going to say the whole week, even just a day, just a joy that lasts the whole day, or just a constant underlying joy. Like, people that just, like my mum, for example, she just has a sunshine about her. She just has an underlying joy. Whereas my dad, he's like, he can be happy, but he has like an underlying rage. And it's just like, they're just different people, but I mean, they're going together 36 years, they've done well. But I think finding what is in your core, what you need personally, that allows you to remember what is good for you, that allows you to reminds you what makes you. When I was Mount Poets, I remembered, actually, these traits and these quirks, they're okay. And that gave me a sense of confidence, and that kind of allowed me to go out into the world just stepping a bit different, because I felt a bit more assured. My shoulders were a bit back, my chin was a bit higher, and that just kind of fed this grounding. And I think for me, grounding, balance and confidence are a bit of a trifecta. It'll feed each other.
Stop to advise up your advice, yeah? Brilliant. Well, it's her pay. Okay, yeah.
For me, I think women should feel more empowered in the new year. So in the sense of educate yourself based on what you are, how you're feeling, symptoms you may be having, whether this is actually right for me. So by speaking with a professional, but stay away from just noise and don't follow it all based on the fact that it's a trend. So the empowerment around the education, around your cycle, how you're feeling, the why, and should I really start this? Should I start this new wellness trend? So I think that's really, really important. And it resonates quite strongly with what we're doing at Wild Nutrition. We want to provide the tools for women to thrive, no matter what comes their way. And there are times that you feel really unbalanced. You might have grief going on. You might have a loss of a job. I mean, there's so much of that going on, especially as we age. I just feel like it's more and more common around us. There's that, and then I hope in terms of balance, we'll try and adopt small sustainable habits. So like you said, it's not about running that marathon. There's just stacking those little wellness habits. So whether you are doing a couple of squats, doing your boiling your water for your cup of tea, or you're waking up and you're doing the breath work, if that's what really works for you. But finding moments and not being so harsh on yourself, not trying to achieve that perfection, because it's just not right. We have enough on our plate. Yeah. Read that.
Well, to add to that, that was my thing, is I think people are always focusing on how they're not doing well enough yet. And actually, when we rewind and pay attention to how far we've come, we realize that actually we're doing a lot better than we're making it out to be. And that self-compassion of, finding that, celebrating the small wins, and just kind of congratulating yourself. It's like you said, I don't think we do that enough. And I think when I reverse engineer it with my clients, they start to see, oh, actually, like I'm actually doing pretty well. And it's easy to constantly think that you need to be earning more, or doing this, or this person's doing that, and I'm not doing that, so who should I be? And this constant, we've got error detection areas of the brain that are constantly scanning your environment with your internal belief system. And when you're constantly seeing somebody else's life and how amazing they're doing, you're getting an error that says, that's wrong, and it doesn't align with what you're doing. So then you start to overthink and think, okay, maybe I should be doing this or should be doing that. We're not designed to see that many errors on a day-to-day basis, but we get to see so many of them all the time. And so we've got this internal battle all the time about how we're just not good enough.
I think that definitely goes back to what we were saying about Gen Z. We didn't have that growing up, whereas, they do constantly.
And so I think it's really important for people to realize that they're actually doing better than they think. They're already amazing, and all the answers are already within us, because we're constantly thinking that we need to find the answers elsewhere. And of course, we need to ask questions like, to you, I wanted to set up a call with you. Those support systems are there, but so often we don't rely on our own intuition to trust that what we're feeling is the correct thing, or what we're thinking is the right thing, or the path we're on is the correct path. And it's just this like, constant turmoil. Can I come live with you?
Yes. You're all welcome. Dr. Raj.
Yes. I think realizing that balance is not about perfection. So balance is leaning into your most authentic self, as Sophia said, and understanding what is it that ticks you and following that. That's really important. I think for women in 2026, what I want to see is that, we're reaching for the stars. Women should be in leadership roles. We should be pushing ourselves. We should be achieving everything we can and not being confined to boxes that other people put us into. Absolutely not. So push. But at the same time, you don't have to compare yourself and think, okay, this person's doing this, I must now come out my lane and do that, because then you're going to, overwhelm your nervous system. So lean into authentic self, go for things that you want to go for, whatever's in your gut. If you're going for that promotion, if you're going for whatever you're going for, starting a new pathway, whatever you're doing, go for it, and go for it, disinhibited and with confidence. And then as a GP and talking about more health related stuff, which I should be doing rather than everything else, I think, first of all, being informed. So as a GP, I love when a patient, especially a female woman, comes in and she's informed. She knows what she wants, or she's coming for a second opinion. I say that really loudly, second opinion. So if you've been told, no, it's not that, go home, and you don't feel satisfied, you're well within your rights to call up the GP surgery and say, actually, I want to see a GP with a women's health interest, please. And that's what I want to do. So you can have somebody, can I see them? I would discuss this. So informed choices, and look at your sources. If you're following online or you are scrolling, because we all do it, and I must minimize how much we do that, but we all do, then please choose pages and sources that are verified and they have good evidence-based health information on them, so that you're not following the wrong information. There's lots of dangerous stuff online as well, and that would merit away for what we can do in grade 6, isn't it?